Hi again, and now we will focus on what happens when you conduct the interview. So now imagine that you are doing the interview. So ideally, first of all, you will be recording the interview by video or by voice, but if you can't because of ethical reasons, of practical issues, then you can still take notes. But these first points that come in here are very important in any type of interview. You have to ask for the participation consent, showing that the ethical standards are in there. Sometimes it is fine if you only get their approval by voice, especially if you are recording, so you have kind of proof that they're okay with them being participating in your interview. That's fine. But sometimes it is also good if they sign the ethical consent. In the ethics lecture, you learn about the ethical consent. Then ask for permission for recording if you are recording. Also offer anonymity so that person can so in the text you can take out the name of the person and the organization. Sometimes they need this and they are okay with this. Sometimes they don't care, and then they're okay if you write their names, but offer it. Also offer the share of the transcript and final paper, so if they want to read what you ended up doing. In my experience, I will say that only 5% of the people really care about this. Most of them, they don't really care. But offer it. And then again, the same thing, you have to report on this, all of these things, like maybe one paragraph with all of these things. Like you can say, I started the interview asking for consent, and then I asked them to sign a paper with the ethical consent. I asked for permission and they say yes. I offer anonymity and they say they didn't need it. I offer to share the transcript and then they say that, okay, I will send it. But then they never showed anything to change or whatever. So write that maybe in one paragraph. And now when you actually start asking questions, it is nice if you have also this, and this is also useful from the previous point when you design the questions, but these are some ideas about what questions can you use. So for example, introductory questions that are very open. So can you tell me about this, whatever. You can also ask follow-up questions if something nice comes up, like maybe you mentioned whatever, can you talk a little bit more about this? Something similar, you can ask for more details about something. You can ask for a specification, like in here, like what did you do after that? You can also, but you need to be careful with this type of questions when the answer is yes or no. Like, have you ever received money for good grades? That's the answer will be yes or no. And then that's not the best for an interview. So if this is a kind of a good question, because even if it's yes or no, probably there will be a little bit more of conversation, but try not to ask that many yes or no questions. And you can also ask for this kind of questions in here, like if they can expand on their opinion. Those are fine too. So some ideas of what you can do, and as you can see, some are in the introduction, some are follow-up. So this might help you to prepare your interview guide. And then what to do after conducting the interview. With usually what the most important thing for you is to either if you took notes or if you recorded, that you save your data, because then you will need to analyze the data later on. So if you record it, transcribe the interview, record and the recording, keep it safe. Make sure that if you need to refine your questions, you do it. Like maybe you also learn like, this is not relevant, or I need to talk about this, then you update your interview guide. And then if you talk that about sending the transcript, you send it, and then in the end you analyze. So it's quite simple, but basically don't forget to to save the data, because you will later analyze the data. So finally, kind of a summary of everything. So a few things to avoid. Try to not influence the response by asking leading questions. I think we discussed this, like try not to position them or limitate them on when they answer. Don't use very complicated or theoretical language, because unless you're asking another researcher, but generally ask questions that are relevant from the industry, not really from the academia. And try not to move too fast. Try to have like some flow in the interview, and don't interrupt the person who is answering. Then on what to do, it is a good idea to have a very clear introduction that you can talk with them, like as I said, some of them like it. Also, know your interview guide very well, so you don't have to look at the paper that much and it doesn't look very robotic, it looks more natural. And at the same time, listen carefully and actively. And here I just want to dig a bit deeper in this last question, that last point, because then when you do the transcript, I think you will value this suggestion. Like the interview has to be on the other side, like ask questions that will start almost a monologue from the other side, that try to ask a question that will trigger something that the person will be happy to talk about a lot for a long time. Like usually a great interview lasts 5 minutes, the other person telling the story, that is great because you have a lot of data. Try not to ask questions and then get a quick response and another question and quick response, because then you don't really grasp the depth that the interview can provide. So try to give voice to the other person and try to be as silent as possible. Prepare good questions that will trigger this kind of behavior from the individual. So I hope that you like these videos on doing interviews. As you can see, and it's a very powerful tool, and make sure that you report all of this in your thesis.